Okay, so I had a idea for a topic. The freedom of speech. This, however you view it, people say that it's not integral to a fair democracy. But when you think of it, how is a politician supposed to show his show their actual views if they're not allowed to say their actual views? Look all over the world. Different things are happening. In some parts of the world, they say they have a democracy, but anybody who has a dissenting view is killed or mysteriously disappears. So, why do people say that the freedom of speech is not integral to a fair democratic system? Why do people look at this wrong? If you think about it, there is only one way a true democratic system could be made, through different means, but mainly if you're able to speak your mind, you're able to control the demos. If you're able to control the demos with your words, and this is basically the only way to do that is for them to say whether or not they like your ideas or not. Now, of course, it does have its stipulations, like a lot of other things. There is faults to everything, but there is more faults to restricted speech than freedom of speech. If you have restricted speech, you will always be heading in one direction. Unless people realize, oh hey, nobody likes this, you're always going to be heading towards a more authoritarian state. Without the freedom of speech, nobody can show what their opinion really is. Nobody can dissent from what the state wants you to say. Nobody can say yes or no to what the state wants. Nobody can say yes or no to what everybody thinks everybody agrees with. If you allow dissenting opinion, everybody can disagree and agree as much as they really truly want. Now, authoritarian states hate that. They don't get to control the demos all they want if there's freedom of speech. All they can do, and all they are able to do with freedom of speech, is restrict it. And if there is freedom of speech, they don't have to do anything, they just have to restrict the words that they don't like. No matter what the word is, if it's restricted, it's against freedom of speech, and it becomes restricted speech. The freedom of speech is naturally integral to a proper democracy. If you do not have a proper democracy, well, if you don't have the freedom of speech, how do you have a proper democracy? Without the freedom of speech, a democracy can slowly chip away at your rights. And you can't say that you don't like it because you can get arrested and possibly even killed by the state for that. You can never say your disloyalty to the state if the state doesn't allow you to speak. If you can't speak your mind, you can't tell the truth. If you can't tell the truth, then the state will almost always stay on top. The book 1984 is a good representation of where an authoritarian state can go if left to its own devices for long enough. The freedom of speech, though flawed, is better than any other system. It's better than democracy, which democracy, if people vote for somebody, and everybody realizes this in our current system, the public can accidentally go the wrong direction and go for something they won't like. Look at what happened to Germany before World War II. The people voted for Hitler. What was a stop for that? There wasn't really anything, because he slowly started chipping towards what he wanted and what the demos would despise. The freedom of speech is just that. The ability to say your mind when and wherever you want. If you can't speak your mind, then what's the point of living in that society? If you're constantly living in fear of being killed off by the state from what you say, what's the point of saying anything? That's what goes through the mob mentality of the country that is under restricted speech. If you have restricted speech, you never know if the state isn't going to like what you say. If people merely can decide that you're arrested based on the fact that you offended somebody, then why are we even in the same society as the person who gets offended? One person's offense should not control the entire society. If the whole society doesn't like something, they can either get over it, or they can try to change what they don't like. I'm not sure what else to say right now, but when you have, all I have to say is when you can't speak, what's the point in supporting your country if they don't let you speak your mind? If the world is against you and you're the only one who sees it, what else is there to do? The world isn't made for simple-minded people. The world is made for complex-minded people. Of course, you do need some simple-minded people to just get the job done, but sometimes you need more than simplicity. You need to be able to get the job done, whatever way, shape, or form. Even if speaking about something takes 10 minutes to get your final point across or longer. it's still a representation of the freedom of speech. No one can really deny that. As I said, or here's another thing. There's a notorious country that never had the freedom of speech. And people who tried to speak, well, there's two countries that I can think off the top of my head. One's still around and one collapsed. Like, I think it's less than, if I remember correctly, it's less than 20, 30 years ago, 20, 30, whatever. I'm not looking at the date that it collapsed right this second, so I'm not sure exactly when it collapsed. But the other one, as I said, is still around, and seams are starting to fracture in said country. What is a nationality but the ability to describe it? What happens when nobody can say their mind? Eventually there is a breaking point. And the more people that can't speak, the more likely it is that your nation will know exactly what's going on and start planning a change of power. The change of power is horrible for dictators. Dictators thrive in anti-thoughts. They think are all the thoughts that their nation needs is what they say. What they say is law. If you dissent from what the authoritarian says, the authoritarian wants to kill you for it. Authoritarians cannot have dissenting opinion no matter what. If there's this dissenting opinion, there is... If there's a dissenting opinion, then there is a possibility for a different leader who's not going to pay the authoritarian very kindly. And there were several attempts during World War II and before World War II to kill Hitler. He didn't like people sharing different opinions from his. And those people saw it and didn't like it. And whenever he found out that somebody had a different opinion from his, he would try to kill them. And no matter how much you try, you cannot silence mob. There's a reason why they call it mob mentality. So long as a group of people are thinking near alike, there is no way past it. If somebody's able to break that like thinking bubble, then the mob mentality is over. All it requires is one deviant. One deviant is all it requires to break mob mentality. You may not notice it yet, but those who pay close attention to world events are noticing this mob mentality breaking across Europe, across the world. I have heard complaints about some leaders that used to be oh so famous. From Trudeau in Canada to Merkel in Germany. Even, I forget her name right now, the Prime Minister, I think that's the right saying? The Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. Let me get their name real quick. Yeah, I had it right, Prime Minister. Theresa May. I've heard complaints about Theresa May. I haven't heard as much lately about the Queen herself, but that's probably because she's more of a figurehead anymore. And everybody knows about the whispers of complaints against Putin. Now, with Russia, I can see why they have authoritarians more so than anyone else. Russia has that problem because, well, their country is so big. There's only a few ways you can control land that big. But yeah, I can't think of what much else to add on to this, so over.